And we're back where it all began. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And in a week where we didn't think there would be that much excitement, Week 7 gave it its all and may have even been better than Week 6. It was a very wild weekend for college football where we once again saw 8 teams in the top 25 lose, including 5 to unranked opponents. But the big kicker was that we saw 4 teams in the top 10 lose this past weekend. That included Georgia falling to the hands of LSU. We saw Washington fall to the hands of Oregon, an overtime thriller. Penn State got upset at home for back-to-back home losses to Michigan State, a team they should have taken care of. And then we also saw West Virginia go on the road and shockingly get defeated by Iowa State in the Cyclones. So it was a very wild week for college football. 4 teams, almost half of the top 10 lost this week. And like I said, there were so many other games across the nation. And like I said, in a week that I was not expecting a whole lot of, in a week that I really struggled to find 5 big games to put up on the big board, it was definitely a very pleasant surprise to have so many upsets and so many thrilling games in Week 7. We'll go ahead and break down some of the top games of the weekend like we did last week. We'll kick things off with what I thought was the biggest game of the week, and that was Georgia and LSU. And unfortunately for me, it didn't live up to the hype. LSU, a lot of credit to Ed Orgeron and his squad for bouncing back after that loss to Florida and getting a huge win over the second-ranked team in the country. And there were some articles out there saying that if LSU were to beat Georgia, could you make a case for maybe 3 SEC teams making the college football playoff, that of course being Alabama, Georgia, LSU. And I disagree with that, but that definitely puts the committee, when the playoff rankings come out, in a very difficult situation, and really throws the whole SEC West, especially, in a loop. That date against Alabama and LSU, I believe on November 3rd, is going to be very exciting and have not just SEC title implications, but definitely major college football playoff implications. But the LSU defense showed up once again, winning this game by 20 points. LSU jumping back up to number 5 in the new AP poll. So once again, LSU showed that, hey, look, maybe what happened against Florida was just a fluke. We are certainly not just SEC title contenders, but college football playoff contenders as well. A game that I predicted correctly and got a lot of criticism for back in the summer, Washington losing to Oregon. That was a game played at Autzen Stadium, a game that I felt fairly confident in, knowing the talent that Oregon brought in and the talent that Mario Cristobal had. And everybody likes to criticize Mario Cristobal, but what a job he's done with the Ducks this season. That lone loss coming to a game they should have won against Stanford, and then winning this game 30-27 in overtime against Washington. A very thrilling victory, and kudos to him and the Ducks for getting the win there. Is Oregon now the team to beat in the Pac-12, and can Oregon potentially represent the Pac-12 in the college football playoff? That, like I said, the only loss coming to Stanford. Washington now has 2 losses. Stanford's out of the picture. USC, not a contender for the playoff. Neither is Colorado. So is Oregon now the team to beat in the Pac-12, and could they make a run if they went out to the college football playoff? That's something to keep in mind. But very impressive victory for the Ducks Saturday afternoon. Michigan and Wisconsin, where College Game Day went this past weekend. Probably not where they should have gone, but you know, that's what they chose, and that's all right. Michigan putting it on the Badgers, and basically ruining any hopes that Wisconsin had of making the playoff or maybe even making the Big Ten championship game. I addressed that in my last video, saying how big this game was for both schools in their quest to make a Big Ten championship game. And Michigan answered the call and took care of business. They are certainly not just Big Ten title contenders, but potential playoff contenders. We've got them trending up, and we'll touch on them just in a little bit. Penn State losing to Michigan State. What are you doing, James Franklin and the Nittany Lions? My God. You know, you lose to Ohio State in a crushing defeat, then you get that bye week, you come back home in Happy Valley, and they lose to a Michigan State school that had gotten beat by 10 points to Northwestern just the week before, and they dropped that game at home 21-17. I picked Penn State in the spread. That game, I think they were favored by 13.5 points. I thought coming off the bye, rested, angry after the Ohio State loss, Michigan State, the way they've been playing, that they should take care of business, and it was at home, and they just laid a huge egg. So Penn State, for the 2nd straight year, losing 2 in a row and just annihilating any hopes that they had of making the college football playoff. So a very, very disappointing year for James Franklin and his squad. Miami is not back. Miami is out. After losing on the road to Virginia and playing very undisciplined football down the stretch, when you have players like Mark Richt has to get control of his players, when you have an opportunity to get a stop like they did against Virginia, maybe hold them to another field goal, and have a chance to go down there and tie the game or even take the lead late, and you have these unforced penalties just based on undisciplined and idiotic plays, it's ridiculous. So Mark Richt has to get control of his team because their players cost them that game. Some of the unforced penalties, unforced errors, that was just a mental game really just screwed up the Hurricanes there. So, but in all, huge credit to Virginia getting the huge win at home. Hurricanes were a solid team, but not ACC title contenders, not playoff contenders, and no team will ever be that way when you cannot be disciplined. You do not have coaches that can discipline their players. Iowa State and West Virginia, I'll address that. We got Iowa State trending up, and we'll talk on that in a second. But holding West Virginia and Will Grier to just 100 yards through the air. Will Grier, a potential Heisman contender, and he just did not answer the call, losing this game 30-14. Like I said, only 100 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Huge credit to the Cyclones on both sides of the ball. Like I said, we'll touch on them trending up because they certainly deserve to be with back-to-back wins over solid ranked opponents. This does not derail West Virginia's season, does not derail their chances for a Big 12 championship game, but they have a tough schedule coming up here. They still haven't played Texas, they still haven't played Oklahoma, so they're going to have a lot of work to do, and they're going to have to win, hopefully, potentially both of those to even try to continue their quest for the college football playoff and still try to make a run to the Big 12 championship game. And then finally, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh. Very thrilling matchup there. Pittsburgh's been prone to pull off a couple upsets or two. It was a couple of years ago they beat Clemson. Just last year they beat Miami. And I think it was all the way back in 2012 when Notre Dame made the national championship game that they nearly beat the Fighting Irish in overtime. I believe it was triple overtime maybe. But Notre Dame pulling it through late, 19-14 victory over the Panthers. But Notre Dame, I think they're number 4 in the country now. Certainly looking like college football playoff contenders and a huge, huge win. But a little too close for comfort over the Panthers. So we're going to talk on teams trending up, trending down. As always, our Week 7 was not as well as we were expecting it to be, but because it was so similar to Week 6. And we saw what happened in Week 6. We just went 20-11. Not our best. 18-11 is not our best either, but we'll take it. Whatever. As the season goes on, hopefully these records will improve and we'll still finish above our 76%. 62.1% on Week 7, 75.7%, so 76 rounded up. If you want to do that, 224 and 72 overall. So we're on pace we're a little behind where we were last year, but still looking very solid. I always want to finish 75% or above. I'd love to break our record that we had last year, but we'll see how that goes. Against the spread, 4-4, right at 500. I think we've done that for 3 weeks now. We just can't seem to get over the hump. But if you're taking our bets, you're still breaking even, and if you take the right ones, maybe you're making money if you don't bet on all 8. But we'll gladly take 500. You're not winning, but you're not losing. Overall, 45 and 34, right at 57%. When you finish that high above 50%, that means you are making money. So a full 7% above, that's where you want to be. We want to stay above 500, and I think that will end up happening by the end of the season. So not great against the spread, but certainly not bad either, especially with this being our first year that we're really releasing all this to you guys and really going so deep into the spread picks. So we're going to jump on to teams trending up. And we've got Utah starting off 4-2 right now. And just 2 weeks ago, like I said, it's amazing how quickly things can change in college football. Just 2 weeks ago, I had Utah on my trending down board. Teams going down. They were tanking. They were losing games they shouldn't lose. They had lost to Washington. They had lost to Washington State. Washington was excusable. Maybe not Washington State, although they just now cracked the top 25. But this was a Utah team that I thought was going to be able to, compete in the Pac-12 and make a run to the Pac-12 championship game. And over the past 2 weeks, I've seen that Utah team that I thought was going to come out in the summer. They have come out these past 2 weeks, annihilating Stanford, and then just this past on Friday, annihilating Arizona, who has been a train wreck this season in Kevin Sumlin's first year. So Utah certainly trending out. Huge dates against USC coming up next week, and then later on the season against Oregon, who they also are playing at home. They get both of those at home. So Utah, with only 2 losses, still a very large candidate for making the Pac-12 championship game, but huge dates against USC and Oregon. They need to split those at the least to continue those hopes. I think we had those at 9-3 on the year, so that's still a strong possibility. Iowa State, like I just mentioned, taking easy care of West Virginia, and we knew that Iowa State's a very, very difficult place to play, but I was not expecting West Virginia to lay an egg that bad. Although I did not change any predictions this week, and I did predict Iowa State to win this game. Just want to throw that one out there. I didn't make any prediction changes, and back in the summer, I had a gut feeling this was a major trap game for the Mountaineers, and it certainly was. Brock Purdy had a huge game at quarterback. Ever since he's come in, has played extremely well. As I mentioned, Iowa State has won 2 in a row over ranked opponents. Oklahoma State just 2 weeks ago, winning that game in a thrill. I think it was 48-42. And then, like I said, this past Saturday, winning that game against West Virginia. David Montgomery, 189 yards on the ground. So give a lot of credit to the Cyclones, who have now risen back up to 500, sitting at 3-3. Should get back to bowl eligibility. and they have a very, very strong resume. If only they had been able to take care of business in a close one against Iowa and a close one against Oklahoma, who knows where the Cyclones would be right now. But nonetheless, I'm very impressed with this Iowa State team. And then Michigan, as I've said before, we don't like to throw teams that are usually super highly ranked on our teams trending up. But Michigan's been pretty quiet when you think about it. That win over Wisconsin was very impressive. They only have one loss, and that lone loss came at the very beginning of the season against Notre Dame. Since then, they are 6-0, but people really haven't been talking about them that much. They've been fairly quiet, and they are slowly looking better just about every week. And if they keep this up, have a chance to set up a very, very huge date against Ohio State in the season finale. But they still have games against Michigan State this coming week. Still have a game against Penn State, who, despite their struggles, are still a very difficult team to play and still a very talented team. So they're going to have to take care of business here if they want to stay in the Big Ten race and certainly the college football playoff race, but they deserve to be trending up. That win over Wisconsin was unbelievable to me. I took Wisconsin in that game with the spread picks. They were 9.5-point underdogs, and I thought that was way too many. I thought Michigan was going to win that game, but I expected it to be much closer than it really was. So what they did against the Badgers was impressive. A lot of credit to Jim Harbaugh and what he's doing with this team. Teams trending down. Always my least favorite part, but something we've got to do. Auburn. Auburn, I get criticized every year for my picks against Auburn. And I've addressed before, and I know I didn't pick them to be horrible this year. I think I had them sitting at 9-3. But right now they already have those 3 losses. I've certainly missed the mark on what's been going on with Auburn this year. I didn't think they'd beat Washington, and they did. Didn't think they'd lose to Tennessee this past weekend, and they did. That's very inexcusable. And I'll throw something even bolder out there. Auburn will fire Gus Malzahn by the end of the year. They're sitting at 4-3 right now, and they have yet to play Georgia or Alabama. Both of which, but the way Auburn's playing right now, those will be losses. So you're looking at a 7-5 season, maybe at best. Ole Miss, a team that has a very talented offense, maybe not necessarily defense, have yet to play them. Auburn's a train wreck right now, and Gus Malzahn, I said this last year that I didn't think it was wise of him to stay. I know there were a couple teams that were looking to lure him away from Auburn, but he thought this was going to be a team that could maybe win an SEC championship again. Or tried to get there. He won one many years ago against Missouri, lost the last one to Georgia, but he thought this was a team that could compete for an SEC championship, and they have not done that. They're 4-3 right now. They've lost Mississippi State and Tennessee in back-to-back games, have yet to play Georgia and Auburn, or Georgia and Alabama. Certainly deserve to be trending down. It's going to be a train wreck season, a very disappointing season already for the Tigers and Gus Malzahn. I think he will be out of a job by the end of the year, and if he's not, the fans will certainly be calling for his head. TCU, a team that's kind of been disappointing this season, but a team that I knew was not going to be as good as they were last year, sitting at 3-3 right now, have lost 3 of their last 4 games against Ohio State, Texas, and then Texas Tech. Their lone win over that 4-game stretch, a 3-point victory, narrow victory over Iowa State. So it's been a very disappointing year for Gary Patterson and his Horned Frogs, but hopefully they can turn things around. I still think they're going to get to bowl eligibility. I'm not really too concerned about that, but we knew that this was going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year and a little bit of a year they had to take a step back from the success they've had over the past few years in Big 12 play. But sitting at 3-3, losing 3 of the last 4, TCU certainly trending down. And then Oklahoma State staying in the Big 12, also losing 3 of their past 4, but not against as solid of teams as TCU has lost to, losing to Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Kansas State. So, you look at TCU's schedule, losing to Ohio State and Texas are excusable, and Texas Tech, even for that matter, has been playing extremely well. Oklahoma State, really Texas Tech is the only team that I could excuse them for, because losing at home to Iowa State was not ideal, allowing 48 points on your home turf. And then Kansas State, a team that was, 2-4 when they played, got annihilated like 31-12. So, Mike Gundy certainly has his work cut out for him here. They are just 4-3. They will still make a bowl game. I have faith in that. They might snag an upset somewhere down the road. I've still got a game against Texas down there, maybe at home. Maybe they can snag an upset there. But, everybody's talking about, is this the end of the reign of TCU and Oklahoma State? The success we've seen for the past decade or so, is this maybe coming to a close? I don't think that's the case. Teams have good years, teams have bad years, but Gary Patterson and Mike Gundy certainly have their work cut out for the rest of this season, and maybe for the next few seasons to come as they have to rebuild these programs and get their recruits coming back in. So these are our teams trending up. Teams trending down going into Week 8 of the college football season. Once again, not our best week, sitting at 18-11, but, once again, we'll take it, and hopefully these records will continue to improve. And hopefully, as I've been saying, maybe Week 8 will be just as good as Week 7, because this was certainly one of the more thrilling and more shocking weekends of college football so far. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, at Predictive. The link will be in the description below for that. There'll be a lot of more extra content, some analysis over there, so make sure you go check that out there. And as always, please continue to check us out here on YouTube, and please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. and we will see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.